No be juju.
The African mythology podcast you never knew you needed.
Vibes.
We're no mythologists, just two young Nigerians with a relatively recent interest in African mythology and storytelling. In each episode, we'll be recounting various myths and legends across the African continent, while drawing parallels between them as well as mass culture today. It's all vibes, not juju. Hey guys!
Hey, welcome to the first episode of No Be Juju podcast.
Mama, we made it!
Mama, we made it. It's okay, hold the applause in studio audience. We love you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us on our first episode of this podcast.
Yeah, this episode is going to be centered on African creation stories, but we thought we'd begin with a story of our own. Why did we start a podcast on African mythology?
Well, first of all, for both of us, it was actually based off of ignorance. We didn't know a lot about African history and storytelling. And as people of, that grew up in Africa, we kind of, held ourselves accountable, like, this is not really right. It's not right.
This ain't it.
Yeah, like, we consume a lot of, non-African media, like most people, where we watch loads of movies, series, and read books. But yeah, like I said, they're usually non-African.
Yeah.
And we don't really know much about African mythology.
100%. I know quite a bit about, Greek myths, Roman myths, but my African mythology knowledge, honestly, it was limited to just, Shango,
Yes.
god of thunder. I know Oshun. I don't even know what she's a goddess of. Like, the knowledge was, it just was not there.
Yeah.
It was not there.
Lacking. It was lacking.
That was one of the main incentives for doing this.
So we thought we'd, dive into our history, and I think it was about a few years back where we were both in the same stage of, trying to dive into African history. We were not researching, but we're just watching YouTube videos and podcasts, and we found that it was mostly, colonial history. And, those things are important. We're not downplaying the process of learning about colonial history. But after listening or reading about it, I always felt kind of like, a bit down in my spirits. Not gonna lie. It's not the most, pleasant thing to like listen to, colonization stories. Well, not stories, colonization.
Yeah.
But so we thought, okay, so what happened before that? What came before colonization? Who were we as people before the English came to colonize?
Yeah. In the case of Nigeria.
Anyway.
Yeah, as you said, like there are thousands of years of history, of stories, of legends and myths, and to only focus on, or to primarily focus on colonial history and post-colonial history, we're doing ourselves a bit of a disservice, I think. And so this podcast, we just want to kind of dive into that a bit, and I think one way we hope to do that is through learning a bit about these myths and legends.
Yeah.
But we encountered a few difficulties, didn't we? Trying to start this podcast. Obviously, African mythology, Africa is a continent, period. Like, it's
Point blank,
the
period.
most diverse continent on the planet. And,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. It comes, it's lovely that we have such like a rich culture to dive into.
Yeah.
But because like we actually looked it up, like even genetically, we're the most Africa is the most diverse. So obviously that translates into diversity of culture, of languages, and it's so extensive, and that's beautiful. But then there comes a problem when you're trying to, in terms of like recording these stories, there's so many different iterations of the same story, and it can be hard to keep track of everything. Even researching this was a bit difficult because yeah, it's so vast. It's so vast.
It's really, really diverse. Obviously, in Africa, as you said, we have so many different tribes, loads of different tribes within even one country, and then we have loads of different countries within the continent. So, and within those specific tribes, like, they all have their own mythological pantheon. So a pantheon is like collection of like deities. For example, a Yoruba tribe in Nigeria have hundreds of gods and goddesses. So there's a lot of history. There are a lot of stories to be told and to be extracted, and it's
exciting.
It is,
but it can also be a bit
intimidating and
overwhelming. Yes, like when we were doing our research, it got a bit academic. We were like, this is not, we don't have the range.
We were seeing all kinds of lovely, rigorous texts, and honestly, we are not up to those tasks.
No, we're not.
So what we hope to do through this podcast is just make these stories, these myths, these legends a lot more accessible, and also have fun while doing it. As we said, because of African mythology is so extensive and is so diverse, the content is limitless, and where we can take this is limitless. And so, we're just going to have fun with this.
Yeah, we're giving you the spark notes, the bullet points. If you would like to, go and look it up yourself after, that's fine. But if you don't, that's also fine.
It's also great.
We all have things we're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not going to be rigorously academic, because even we sometimes struggle with researching. So
and African mythology, in itself is pretty different from other mythological pantheons. In African oral cultures, myths embody philosophical reflections, they express values, and they identify moral standards. So they actually reflect a lot about of the values, the things that we held dear in times past, and they also explain a bit about why things are the way they are today. And
different gods. So different gods had different abilities that people upheld in society.
Yeah.
So we think that even though it may not be like a, letter by letter, translation of history, but we can actually draw, stories and draw lessons of what we found important back then, and what were our values back then from these stories.
Yeah. While mythologies from other cultures are carefully preserved relics of ancient times, African myths and legends, as you said, are still meaningful parts of everyday life. African myths still deal with universal themes such as the origin of the world, fate of individual after death, and many spring from the continent's own settings, conditions, and history. And so we just wanted to know a bit more about who we were, and through that, we know a bit more about who we are.
Or what lessons can we draw from them that we can apply to ourselves right now, or our culture right now.
Or just vibes. Just want to have fun.
As in just having fun.
Want to have a party.
Chill, cruise,
maybe it's just vibes. But,
and another difficulty that we found, or not difficulty, but kind of like an internal and external struggle was, the generalized stigma against African traditional religion and mythology.
That's a big one.
I want you guys to just cast your mind back to any movie or series that you've seen that has contained anything about like African, like magic or mythology or everything. Just picture it. Did you think of a doll? Was there a guy with a red cloth? Were there marks on people's faces? Was it dark? And I think that tells a lot. That tells a lot about the way it's portrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can tell what I'm trying to get at is that it's not news that, African traditional religion is highly stigmatized in pop culture and media and just in general. And it would be hard to discuss African mythology without somehow mentioning African traditional religion. A lot of these mythological figures like Shango are still revered by many today. And though the word myths may make it seem like these stories are fictional, we're trying to make it clear that using this word does not in any way try to minimize or disrespect other people's cultures and beliefs. So we want to just set that straight.
We also think it's important to just kind of let you guys know the difference. I'm sure some of you already know, but the difference between myths and religion. There are obvious overlaps between the two, but religious is more structured. It's a more formally organized system of beliefs and practices that are centered around the worship of supernatural forces or beings. Conversely, mythology is a collection of myths, stories that belong to a specific religion or culture. So basically, not all myths are related to a religion. Some are purely cultural. And an example of this would be the legend of Bigfoot. So this is part of the reason why we named our podcast No Be Juju, because, I mean, you can't deny those links, especially in African mythology, between African myths and also traditional religion. But as we said previously, we just want to kind of highlight those stories and highlight those tales and mean no disrespect in any way to other people's cultures or beliefs.
Definitely.
So on that note, I think
it's time, enough blabbing. Enough talking.
Let's get to the stories. That's what you all came for.
Stories.
That's what you came here for. So without further ado, we have African creation stories.
So this first creation story is from West Africa, from Nigeria specifically. It is from the Yoruba tribe, which is situated mostly in the southwestern parts of Nigeria, although there are much smaller scattered groups that live in Benin and northern Togo. Keep in mind that there are multiple variations of this story, but this is the most popular story I found while I was researching. So it started off with the universe consisting only of the sky, the water, and the wild marshlands. And the ruler of the sky and creator of the sun was called Olorun, which you might be familiar with. And the ruler of the water was Olokun, the ruler of the sea. And there's another god called Obatala, who is known as the creator of humans and land on earth. And one day he just felt, we need some land. We need something more than just the sky and the water. So he went to Olorun and he asked for permission to make mountains, valleys, forests, and fields. And Olorun granted Obatala permission to create solid land on earth. Keeping in mind, this will be relevant later, that he did not ask Olokun for her permission, and that will become relevant later on. So Obatala went to Orunmila, which was the oldest son of Olorun and also known as the god of prophecy. And he told Obatala that he will need a gold chain to reach from the sky to the waters below. Obatala now went and asked around for pieces of gold from different gods, and he was able to ask a goldsmith to fashion a chain out of all the gold that he collected. And he used the gold chain to hang from the sky. And while he hung from the sky, he was also carrying a bag that was filled with different things. So this bag was filled with sand. It was filled with a snail shell filled with sand, a white hen, a black cat, and a palm nut. When Obatala climbed down, he realized that the chain was not long enough. So he basically hung in the air and dumped the sand on the earth. The theory about how hills and valleys formed was that the places that had more sand formed hills, and those that had less sand were the valleys. And the first place that he let go of the chain, and when he let go, the first place that he fell, which was a mountain, was called Ife.
Okay.
So he planted the palm nuts, and that turned into a palm tree, and that was supposedly where a lot of crops then flourished from. And he kept the cat for company, but he was still quite lonely. So that's when he started to create clay figures in the likeness of himself. But Obatala was a bit of an unserious human being, and while he was making the clay figures, he got drunk on palm wine. As expected.
Vibes and rocks.
So, obviously, when you make something when you're drunk, it's not going to be perfect. So
That's shade.
Yes, that shade. but facts. Shit, but facts.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
But yeah, so obviously, imagine trying to make an art project when you are intoxicated. It didn't even turn out well.
Unless you're Picasso.
Yes, unless you're Picasso. And that's called abstract. So
it was an interpretation. I call it
personal interpretation.
I call it intoxication.
Yes, exactly.
Intoxicant.
So obviously, they were deformed when they came out. They were very imperfect. And that is supposedly where a lot of imperfections in the human race came from. And Obatala apparently is known to be the protector of the deformed, and he vowed never to drink again after that, which I think is wise. So the humans that he created now formed the first Yoruba village in Ife, and he returned to the sky afterwards and split his time between Ife and his home in the sky. So like I said, he didn't ask for Oloku's permission, and as expected, this made her very angry, and it was said that a great flood destroyed Obatala's kingdom, and the remaining people then pleaded with Eshu, which was the divine messenger of the gods, and they asked Eshu to plead to Olorun Obatala to help them to fight Oloku and her flood. So Orimla then went to Earth, which caused the waters to retreat, and Oloku apparently challenged Oloru to a weaving contest. Knowing that he could not beat Oloku, he devised a plan to accept the challenge without actually participating. So he sent a chameleon to judge Oloku's skill. Every time Oloku weaves a new cloth, the chameleon mimics the fabric, and from then on, Oloku was defeated.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was
a lot.
Yes, that was a lot.
That was a lot.
There's so much to unpack.
There's a lot. There's a lot. So what did you think when you read that for the first time? What were your thoughts?
I think my first, obviously, the part that came out was the fact that he was drunk when he made human beings, which honestly is hilarious to me. But I think it's funny how
we like to party.
Yeah, we like to parry.
We like to
parry even when we're doing serious things.
Yoruba culture, especially,
we're very festive people, very celebratory, people, and that's reflected here. But it's funny that was like the people's way of trying to justify imperfections in
It's really
humanity.
interesting because I feel like a lot of myths, they just try and myths are kind of stories that a lot of times you're just trying to make sense of current realities, like trying to find a way to explain why things are the way they are. Moving further down south, the creation story I'm about to tell is from the Nguni people of South Africa. The Nguni kingdoms, made up of the Zulu, Xhosa, Ndebele, and Swazi, please forgive my pronunciations, were prominent throughout history. Most of all, the Zulu kingdom, which was ruled by the very well-known warrior king, Shaka Zulu, that ruled in the early 1800s. This version of the creation story is from two sources, so African Myths of Origin by Belcher and Bantu Myths and Other Tales by Jan Nappert. It is a retelling from various sources, the earliest of which came from the late 1800s. Like most African creation stories, this varies from region to region, language to language. The Zulu creation story states that men were made from multicolored reeds, Uhlanga, each one giving rise to varying lines of human. In the beginning, there was a large swamp in the land to the north called Uhlanga. In this swamp, there were many different types of reeds, each with its own distinct color. One morning, the sky god, please forgive me for this pronunciation, Umvelinkangi, descended from heaven and married Uhlanga. And out of Uhlanga, he broke up the different colors of reeds and made them into people. He made them in pairs, a man and a woman from each individual reed. These original people were known as the Unkulunkulu, aka ancestor. Each pair became the parent of a tribe of human beings, each one having its own color. Every pair of Nkulunkulu had a different shade of brown, reflecting the skin shade range of the Zulu people. According to the Zulu creation story,
People were created from these water plants, the reeds that grew from the valley with which the sky god lived in and married. And every unkulunkulu, or ancestor, and the tribes that were formed as a result had their own distinctive medicine, charms, keys, and theories to life. As we said previously, myths aim to reflect and explain our current realities. And I think one of the things this myth tries to explain is the diversity that exists between humans. And not to be corny or make this into an after school special, but it does emphasize that though we may have different skin shades, backgrounds, and beliefs, we're all human, and that's that. As mentioned previously, there are other creation stories within the Nguni kingdom. For the Xhosa, sorry, please just apologize for my pronunciations. I'm very sorry. Humans and animals came from a cave called Umhlanga. And the interesting thing I found about this is that Umhlanga sounds very similar to the reeds which were called Uthlanga. But it's so intriguing how that slight change in language can transform the whole story. As the Xhosa, Swazi, and Zulu were all Bantu-speaking groups, they all had a lot in common despite being distinctive tribes and with their own cultures. Among the Swazi, it was believed that reeds, Umhlanga, very similar again to Umhlanga and Uthlanga, were used to make boats by the founding monarchs who sailed across the river into the present-day Swaziland. And so this just shows the range of stories and the diversity that exists even within a particular geographic region, and that's replicated throughout the continent. Also, within the Nguni kingdom, there's another story that explains the reason behind wealth and class differences between people. Legend states that 3 types of men lived in the home of the creator: the Kwa, the Bantu, and the white. And as I'm assuming here that white means European/Caucasian. The Kwa was a wanderer, adventurer, and hunter of animals. The story is that he loved honeybirds so much that he will follow them into their hives and partake in their honey. With time, he wouldn't come home as often, and eventually stopped coming altogether. The second type of man, the Bantu, loved cattle and would take care of them, leading them to pastures, ensuring they didn't fall sick or get eaten by lions, and actually at the end of the day, this paid off. He inherited all the cattle as a reward. The third type of man, the white, stayed at home, studying and helping the creator, and through this conscientiousness, he basically inherited the world, specifically the secrets of the world. And it is believed that this is why whites in SA are much wealthier than the Bantu and the Kwa. So yeah, very interesting and creative example of how myths are used to somehow, make sense of current realities.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even now, like, we are constantly trying to make sense of the world around us. And, even more so. Even though, like, we have more, definite religions now, Christianity, Islam, all those things. Like, even in our own personal ways, we continually try and, like, make sense of what's going on around us. So they use stories. Mm-hmm. They use their stories to be able to, make sense of it.
Make sense of that. Yeah, and I thought it was just really, like, interesting how, like, the Kwa guy just...
Yeah, that's...
get anything.
Anything, that European influence, I'm wondering... when that story was, so whether it was pre-colonial or post-colonial, that actually makes me think about that.
Yeah, because you think about when did the Europeans first land in Africa? So you're thinking like 15th, 16th century. So this story must be pretty recent because, the first records of, you guys can fact check me if I'm wrong, but the first records of like Europeans occupying South Africa, maybe like late 18th, early 19th century. So this origin story must have, sprouted pretty recently. And as we have just said, I think it's just a way to explain why those disparities existed.
It's also interesting how like it's kind of like the whites is superior to like the other like counterparts as well.
That's a toughie.
Really, and they're trying to like justify why is he superior, and I think it shows that they see knowledge as like a very high, in a very high regard. Like knowledge is the way to attain most things in life. That's basically how they see knowledge.
That's really interesting also because, as you know, in the Zulu creation story, which it mentioned how like each please guys forgive me, I'm butchering this word, unkulunkulu but had his own like specific medicine, and the medicines were seen as like a secret charm to life. So I think, obviously medicine, there's a lot of knowledge that comes with, knowing what drugs to use, what medicines to use. So I think that's pretty much in line with what you've said. Like knowledge was very highly valued, and knowing the secrets of life, knowing the secrets of the land was something that was really appreciated. Yeah. So, it's funny how people try and, these days, due to some of the associations with traditional African religion, people try and discount some of these stories, but they kind of emphasize the importance of knowledge in the first place, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to increase our own knowledge, and hopefully you guys people who have not heard these stories before.
So I think it's still, like I said, like we can learn from these stories. You can still. We definitely can assess the fact that we're living in an information age, and we continuously see how important information is in every part of life.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, yo. Word.
Straight facts.
Okay, so my story, my second story is from the Kuba people of Central Africa and the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it says that in the beginning there was Umbombo, the creator, along with water and darkness. Umbombo, or Bomba, as he is called in the Bushongo tradition, is said to be a giant white-collared figure who had been ill for millions of years, and the reason why he was ill was because of his incurable loneliness.
So sad.
Yes. Cue the aww. So finally, because of his sickness, he vomited and produced the sun, which created light and day. This then caused the water to dry, creating land. Mombo threw up again and made the moon and the stars.
Quite graphic.
Some gastroenteritis going on here, which divided day and night. And then, if that was not enough, another one. He threw up again, and out came 9 animals.
I think he needs some fluid resuscitation.
He needs some. He needs some drugs, some medication. Came 9 animals. So a leopard called Koi Bomba, a crested eagle called Ponga Bomba, a crocodile called Ganda Bomba, a fish called Yo Bomba, a tortoise called Kono Bomba, heron called Nyanyi Bomba, goat called Budi, a scarab.
It's not a bomba.
It's not a bomba.
They get 20 bombas out. So they just had to...
They're like, you're not worthy.
You're a goat.
You're a goat. Just clowns, guys. Sorry,
everybody, guys.
And a black cat-like animal that would eventually become lightning, called Seed Bomba. Sorry, guys, this pronunciation are just all over the place.
All over.
The first heron created more birds. The crocodile created more reptiles and serpents. The goats made horned beasts. And the fish made other kinds of fish. And the beetle made insects. An iguana produced by the crocodile made creatures without horns, along with the animals. Diced carrots, for some reason, were produced. And eventually humans. So we were made after diced carrots.
Diced carrots are more important.
Anymore.
Anybody that's had diced carrots knows.
You know the truth. You can't
play with them diced carrots.
No, you can't.
What is more reliable, your diced carrots or your human being?
I always go with the carrots.
You gotta go with the carrots, or don't they spoil if you leave them out? Sorry, I'm
going to continue.
I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
So Mbombo had 3 sons who finished the world once most of the animals were created. The first son, Iyonye Ngana, tried to make white ants by vomiting them into existence, but died soon after.
Oh, that's really sad.
Yeah, that's sad. In his honor, the ants burrowed deep underground looking for dark soil to bury him in. They found it and brought the soil to the surface to transform the barren deserts into what is now the Earth's surface. Chonganda, the second son, made a plant that gave life to all other trees and plants. And the third son, Chedi, bomber created the final bird, the kite.
Wow.
Yeah. So Tsitsi bomber became so troublesome that Mbombo had to chase her away from the land and into the sky, where she became lightning. However, she continued to strike the earth in her frustration. Mbombo showed humans how to create fire from the trees, telling them that all trees contain the fire within them. When everything on earth had been created, Mbombo retreated to the heavens and gave all his creations over to humans to govern. He also left the first man, called Lokoyima, to serve as God on earth. The woman of the waters in Chenge lived in the east, and her son Woto became the first king of the Kuba people. Woto, first king of Bushango, moved to the west with his children, away from his mother. There they dyed their skins black and changed their language by laying medicine on their tongues.
That's really interesting. I thought, even across most of the stories we've discussed today, it's very interesting how there's always like a single creator who just like sees, the universe and is like, I'm all alone.
Yeah.
What that tells us that, humans we all value just companionship. The fact that we have to, we all kind of rationalize, oh yeah, the reason why the creator made earth, made all these things was because he was alone.
Yeah.
That means that, we think, okay, being alone is not necessarily always, it's necessarily always a good thing, and we value each other's company a lot. So that really comes through in most of the stories that we've told. And also the similarities with, Abrahamic religions like Christianity, it's the same when you think about the way, God said, let there be light.
Yeah.
And, created. Mm-hmm. The world as we knew it. So very interesting.
Yeah, I think another thing I found interesting was that it seems they heavily support the concept of evolution in this story, because if you look at the first created animals, only 9, and then those 9 animals then kind of evolved into different species of animals as well. So they seem to have really valued the concept of like evolution.
And it makes sense. I mean, I feel like a lot of African cultures, we have a very strong connection to the land, and a lot of our traditional religions are very adaptable and very much rooted in change and flexibility. So it makes sense that we would embrace evolution. It's all about change. It's all about progression. It's all about kind of improvements, basically.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we would do that. And it's interesting how, I don't know, you look at the way things, speaking as a Nigerian, you look at the way some things are today. I don't know, I feel like a lot of the belief systems that we are embracing these days don't really allow for much flexibility. We can be quite, rigid in,
I don't think it's a problem
thinking.
with the belief system. I think it's also a problem with the way we may be applying
the belief systems. Yeah, no,
system.
definitely. It's definitely, yeah. No, it's, I mean, even when we're saying things like, the positive and negative aspects of things like just all religions, at the end of the day, it does come down to humans' interpretation of these, of all of these, doctrines, all of these practices. So, yeah, that's really interesting. So that's that.
That's on that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening to the first episode of Nobi Juju, the African mythology podcast you never knew you needed. Yes, I said it again. I did. Because, there are other African mythology podcasts, but we believe that this is the one for you guys. This is the one specially catered to you, whoever you are.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you
whatever
are.
Whatever you do.
You didn't need... No, hey, you say you didn't knew. Jesus. Wow.
We need like a background counter in this thing.
Yeah, we're going to have a shell counter, a background counter. The number of times we just don't know how to speak English. We just need to keep count. So, we're really interested in hearing what you guys thought about this episode. If there were anything that you felt like we left out, or any things you felt were maybe, inaccurate. We are very open to learning. As we said, it's a journey for us as much as it may be for you guys. And just pop us an email at mbjpodcast@gmail.com.
or follow us on Twitter at MBJ Podcast, and you can mention us in any thoughts that you may have.
Please, but correct us in love
and kindness.
And kindness, love and light. Love and light. He's beautiful. He's awesome. Sorry.
Please don't hurt our feelings.
Please. And so, to close,
without further ado, we have our African adage of the day. Today's adage is from Nguni, and it says, "Knowledge without wisdom is like water in the sand." Thank you very much for listening, guys. Have a great week.
bye.